What up? Welcome back to another episode of the NBA Hardwood Show, talking Wednesday, January 24th. What is this? I think a 7-8 game NBA slate. Breaking it all down with the usual Wednesday crew on Draft Sheet. You guys know that by now. Joined as usual by the crew, AP, Mangone, and as Jimmy B says, we're here for winners. We're here so we won't get fined. And the third comment. Sorry, no JT Hayes today, but we'll do our best, the three of us. We'll throw it to you first, AP. How you doing on this Wednesday afternoon?
Yeah, doing really well. JT Hayes on Friday with DC and myself, I believe, right?
Yep.
Mangone. Yeah, yep. So he'll be on Friday, doing really well. We got pretty big slate. Looks like a fun one. I like right now just looking at it. A lot of what I consider core plays that you could build around. So I know it's going to be an interesting one for to break down with you guys. And then obviously like this late game hammer on the Atlanta side. That's going to be an interesting one to discuss. No Trae Young and the Warriors, first game back after the situation, obviously the terrible situation that they've been dealing with. So I don't know. I feel good about the slate. I think it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, we got Travis here, who has been fired from his real estate job at JG Wentworth. Back to the normal grind. He's out of the suit. He's back in the sweatshirt and the backwards hat. The way it should be, Mango. That's the way you want to live life anyway. Welcome back to some sense of normalcy. How you doing on this Wednesday afternoon, Travis?
Yeah, happy to be here. I decided instead I'm jumping in the suite with Taylor Swift. That sounds like a better life, right? Instead of grinding the real estate career, I could be in Taylor Swift's box suite, living the high life. So, enjoying that. I'm excited for the football games coming up this weekend. That's going to be awesome. But, hey, we got some basketball and some fun games today. I'm excited to break it all down. And we had some trades going on, right? Like NBA is starting to get interesting. Terry Rozier just got traded. We also lost the Bucks. They lost their head coach. They decided, hey, he sucks and they need Doc Rivers to save them. Good luck with that. It's not going to work out well for you guys. The Bucks, Big T like to declare the Eagles dead. I'm going to declare the Bucks dead. The Bucks are not a good team this year.
No.
I think they're in trouble this year. That's all. We'll see, but I don't think the Damian Lillard thing is going to work out the way that people think.
What's your definition of dead though? Like, because you have Giannis, you have Dame, you have two guys that they've won a lot of games and they haven't been like convincing wins. They've been ugly. But like, what's your definition of dead?
They're not winning a title. But that's the whole point of that team, right?
Okay,
Like you make those moves to win a title. Like it's just I don't know. Like you're playing to win a title, especially when you have Giannis and Damian Lillard and you make that move. Like I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if Jimmy Butler and Terry Rozier take down the Bucks once again. Like I was thinking about that. I was driving today and I was thinking about the trade and I was like, I wouldn't be surprised if this Bucks team gets slaughtered by the Heat once again and just looks absolutely embarrassing. So Doc Rivers is not a good coach. I'm definitely on board with that. So we'll see how it all works out. I'm excited for the playoffs and the West is going to be fun too. I mean, the West feels like just so wide open. I mean, the Nuggets are clearly the best team in the West, but there's a lot of different like teams that you wouldn't be shocked that could make a run out there, I think.
A lot to discuss today. We could go into all that stuff. I mean, Doc Rivers, I agree with you, Mangone, that I don't think he's the right choice for this Bucks team, but it is funny to like call someone not a good coach who has an NBA title, 1,000 career wins, has been hired by 4 franchises with superstar players. I mean, yeah.
Some might say Doc Rivers is underachieved. Like I think you can make the argument. DC, I would make this argument as a Packers fan. Okay, if I told you had Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers since I was born, basically, wouldn't you say 2 titles is kind of not enough? Like that's all I'm saying. Like sometimes I think there's really good rosters that underachieve. And I don't know. I think Aaron Rodgers was being held back a little bit by Mike McCarthy a bit for some time, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I think you can make that case sometimes that, hey, there's a lot of talent there and other people are holding others back.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. I agree with you for the most part on Rivers. It is just
I was just about to say that. Something went up my nose, and now my eyes are watering. It looks like I'm high, doing coke. I've actually never done that. So, not against others doing it, but it's not something I've done. So, Joe Ross, not doing lines, but something went up my nose, and now I'm just dying.
I feel pretty certain, speaking for Mangone, that he's on that train with you, but that makes us 2 for 3 on that train on this show. I'll leave it at that. Let's get to this slate. A lot to talk about, 8 games, a lot of narratives on this street. AP, you mentioned the Warriors thing. I mean, it sounds like really, really just, legitimate kind of devastation across their team with their coach unexpectedly dying. They're back for the first game after 2 postponements. I have no idea what to kind of think about the Warriors situation tonight, how that will affect them. The Wolves are coming off a crazy spot as well. I don't know if you guys followed this. I'm a Wolves fan, so maybe you guys didn't, or everyone didn't in the chat follow this as closely as I did. But Towns went off for, what was it, I think 40-some points in the first half. And then the player,
he had 44.
This was a night that Embiid went off for 70, and the players were actively asking, getting updates on Embiid to try to catch him with Cat, and they didn't play any defense, and they ended up losing the game on Cat's career night to the Charlotte Hornets at home. Coach called out Cat and pretty much everybody else in the post-game press conference as well. So you've got the Wolves coming off of that spot, which I think is interesting to talk about. And then you've got the Milwaukee spot, right, with a new coach, where you presume the players and Giannis especially had to have a lot to do with the coach getting fired. So I think 3 legit narratives. You could throw in the possible return of Cade Cunningham to the Detroit Pistons. I mean, just a really, really nice or interesting night in the NBA. And listen, I'll take these extra factors. I think it's a good thing, because I think if you think yourself a smart sports fan, a smart DFS player, you should be able to, on average, kind of decipher what these things mean better than the average player making DFS lineups. So we'll get to all that. We'll try to break it all down. We'll start with the first game of the night, and we start off with, I think, one of the best games of the night, frankly, Charlotte and Detroit, at least from a DFS perspective. 231 total in this one. I think it's actually come down a couple points since the opening. Detroit favored by 3. Charlotte, will be without Gordon Hayward for a couple more games. Terry Rozier, obviously the second biggest piece of that offense, traded out of town for Kyle Lowry, who will apparently not play for the Charlotte Hornets, for sure not tonight. So he is out. Cade Cunningham, who's missed, I think, 7 or 8 games for the Detroit Pistons, is now questionable. He was probable, at this time yesterday for the game, downgraded to questionable. I kind of think, AP, that means he's probably more likely to sit, right? He goes to shoot around, his knee doesn't feel quite right, so they downgrade him to questionable. We'll see on Cade Cunningham. And then we do get the return of Nick Richards, who's missed 3 or 4 games for Charlotte. He's presumably going to start at center for Charlotte. I think Charlotte will run out LaMelo, Brandon Miller, Miles Bridges, PJ Washington, Nick Richards. I feel pretty confident about that. Frankly, I kind of like all 5 guys. Awesome game to kick us off here. Detroit, Charlotte, take it away, AP. Talk to us about this one.
Yeah, so our guy, K. Fallick, he had a great call on Brandon Miller, someone he was talking up last slate.
I was on him too, man. He's looked good these last 2 games.
I mean, you guys ran bad. You really ran bad. He had, 3,000 all in the second quarter, and which, I mean, he didn't really play much in the second quarter. He played 3.5 minutes, and all 3 fouls came within those 3.5 minutes. So obviously he didn't check back in, but he played a huge rotation in the second half. It's pretty, this Hornets rotation, I would say is I think it's going to be very tight, assuming the game stays close, which I think we all agree that it should in this spot. And when you look at it, Miles Bridges could play 40 minutes tonight. LaMelo Ball should have to play a ton of minutes, and I think Brandon Miller should have to play a ton of minutes all of the secondary pieces, like the one thing I like about this Hornets team now, Terry Rozier, I think he's going to be a really good fit for Miami, just in their system. Spoelstra can just get the best out of like anyone. And Terry Rozier, he's a guy, he can get buckets. He's a good combo guard, but I would also say that he's not one like LaMelo Ball constantly pushes in transition. Terry Rozier, a little bit more methodical with how he plays. And I think that fits Miami's system just a little bit better. So I think we should expect like fast-paced games from the Hornets. You got to love LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, and Miles Bridges. All of the secondary pieces, the Bryce McGowans, the JT Thors, these are low-usage guys that aren't going to take from their core pieces. And I'm talking offensively, which is what we care about in DFS formats. So that's where I'm going to be. I'm going to assume that we're going to have a really tight rotation here. I have Brandon Miller. So one thing I talked about at the start of the show before, what's his name thought I was doing a line over here, which I wasn't. Brandon Miller, I talked about how I have a lot of core potential plays to build around on the slate. Brandon Miller's one of those guys. I want to be very overweight on him in the spot. No Terry Rozier is just going to open up a little bit more offensively for him. And then same with Miles Bridges. Like Miles Bridges, big price tag, but very, very, very much in play on this slate and in this matchup. So I have a ton of interest in the Hornets side, LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, Miles Bridges. I'm a little unsure what to do with Cody Martin. At the small forward position, I do think there's better plays than him, Max Strus, Sadiq Bey kind of later on in the slate. So I find myself being under on him, assuming he is in. I believe he's still questionable. So again, if Cody Martin's out, it just increases, how much I like Brandon Miller and these other guys. So secondary pieces, I'm off very, very high on Brandon Miller. The Pistons side is one I'm struggling with a little bit. I think it's just Jalen Duren. Cade Cunningham, obviously questionable if he's ruled in. I would assume some type of minutes limit, and it fully takes me off of someone like Jaden Ivey. Alec Burks has had a nice rotation, but I don't trust it all. And I think there's much better plays in that price range than playing like a bench guy and you're relying on him like closing. I'm not buying that here. So I'm going to be off of him. Bojan at 5'8", the price tag is definitely getting a little bit more intriguing. I like this matchup for him, but I still don't trust it either. So like I'm comparing him to kind of in that same range of the Max Struses, the Sadiq Beys, and I just have those guys bumped ahead of him. So not as high on the Pistons side, but I love these Charlotte pieces.
Yeah, that all makes sense to me. We got a troll already in the chat. We're not tolerating the bad mojo today. He says, what does he say? I'm with Mangone. These guys make me yawn anyway. Well, let me help you out, Roth Cleaning Services. We won't make you waste your time any longer on this show. And there, you're.
I want to know whose burner that is. That's a definite burner.
We'll never know because he's gone from the channel. So see you, Roth. Mangone, let's go over to you. Charlotte and Detroit. What do you got for us?
Oh man, I don't know if that guy knows that you have a beef with Weatherman Kevin Roth too.
Yeah, anyone named Roth, I got a zero tolerance for, so he's out of here.
Well, yeah, he's from New Jersey though. I like New Jersey people, but if that was a by accident troll, send me a DM on Twitter. Maybe I can find a way to fix that for you, and you can apologize to DC. But let's keep moving this thing along. Let's go on over to Charlotte Hornets in Detroit, and I think this game is interesting. I like the Brandon Miller stuff that you guys talked about. It wasn't something that I was exactly excited to play. And listen, I haven't been excited to play Brandon Miller that much this year, but definitely taking note of that. And of course, with no Terry Rozier being there, no Terry Rozier is huge, right? That's obviously a ton of usage to go around. That's going to make LaMelo Ball someone that people are interested in at 9.6K. But counter argument to LaMelo Ball, I think he's fine. I think the matchup's really good against Detroit. But like with so many studs to spend for on this slate, and the natural construction of this slate with like there being a lot of really good spend up centers where naturally if you're spending up at center, you kind of run out of salary in other spots. I don't see myself getting to LaMelo Ball as much. And we saw Anthony Davis bust yesterday in like a can't miss spot, right? These studs can always bust at these price tags. So I'm just saying you can fade LaMelo Ball. It's not as uncomfortable as people think. If you run the event 100 times or the Sims 1,000 times, LaMelo Ball is not going to kill you as I think much as people think. But I think there are some really good cheap values here. Like you guys said, Brandon Miller, like that. I think Miles Bridges at 7.6K. I like him more than LaMelo Ball. I think he's got a really, really good upside here in this spot. And then, I think Cody Martin is another value. I wouldn't ignore it, 4.3K. But another big talking point on this slate is I think there's a lot of really good forward options that we're going to get to. And Cody Martin's a good play, but you're going to have to decide, do I play Cody Martin over some of these other forwards who we'll get to and we'll discuss? And I think that's important information. So overall, I do like some of these options on the Charlotte side. Detroit, I'm not dying to get to too many options over there. I think the main guy I'm looking at is Jalen Duren at 6.8K. Listen, it's a really good spot against Charlotte, right? And because they have Nick Richards back, that's actually kind of good for Jalen Duren. That way, they will probably stick with a traditional 5 a little bit more, right? Now, of course, if they're trailing and they're trying to play catch up, what they'll do is they'll try and get to a more small ball 5 lineup and try and chalk up a bunch of threes. But that means they're playing well, right? That means Jalen Duren is probably dominating down low and will probably continue to dominate down low. So I do think Duren is a really good center option to consider at 6.8K on the Detroit side.
Yeah, just addressing this because it does seem like all three of us are on the Brandon Miller train. I know I am. One thing I've been trying to do, number one, trusting good projections a little bit more than I have in the past. And that's a change that I've made with good success so far in NBA this year. But what I did kind of after that was still do all my own research like I used to do prior to looking at any projections or ownership percentages, coming to my own conclusions and then saying, oh, okay, what did I maybe miss, right? And then you can kind of go and do another run through it. And Brandon Miller is one of those where he was right near the top of my list, doing my own research, not looking at anyone else's, articles, projections, ownership. And I don't really get why he is projected to be under 5% owned like he is. I mean, I think he's going to have a huge role in this game. I think the talent is real. The matchup couldn't be any better against Detroit. So he's one that, like I said, I'm more willing to kind of give into the projections than I used to be. But I don't know if I'm moving on Brandon Miller tonight. I really, really do like him. I want to spend just a couple more seconds here on this game because it is one of my favorites of the night. AP, what are your thoughts on Nick Richards here coming back from a few games off? I mean, this is a shorthanded team. I know they could go small with Washington at the 5, but like PJ Washington is not a center. Mark Williams is out. They really don't have, and they're shorthanded anyway, right? Is there a chance we get Nick Richards for 30, 32 minutes against Detroit? Amazing matchup. Talk to me about Nick Richards because he's one that I'm on the fence about.
Yeah, I mean, PJ Washington has had some foul issues when he's been in there, especially at the 5.
Yeah, I think he has to foul to stop anybody.
Exactly. Yeah. I think if there's no minutes limit on him. I mean, unless something is announced, I would assume 30 plus minutes. So I think it's a really, really interesting play. My issue though is we have some really good center plays. Sure. I mean, I like Jalen Duren on the other side, but then, it's you can only play 2 centers. And if you do, you're taking up obviously a position in that utility spot. So, and Şengün's going to be an interesting discussion later because he grades out really well for me. So I think Nick Richards is more of a large field tournament play. That's where I have him graded at the moment. And the Brandon Miller ownership discussion, I think, is interesting. I think people are light on his minutes, kind of around the industry. I have an aggressive minutes projection on him. And mainly it's because of what I saw in the second half last game. So obviously that could change if fouls become an issue, but I don't see that happening. And the other reason why he's likely to be lower or low-ish owned is just the other plays in that range. Max Strus has a cheap price tag on him. Sadiq Bey, same thing. Bogdan Bogdanovic later on in the game. It's just all of those other plays, I think, on paper are projecting just a little bit better than Brandon Miller. And so I think that's why he's currently has a little bit light of an ownership tag.
It's not just that, AP. It's also the forward position in general there are all these values that everyone's going to play. Like if I told you what is the construction that everyone's doing today, they're probably playing DeJounte Murray, they're playing Alfred Sengun, and then they're playing cheap forwards and maybe Bogdanovich, right? Like I'm not saying that's for sure what everyone is doing, but if I told you what the optimal is, that's just what people are doing. Now, one way to flip the build is to not spend down at forward with all your spots, right? I think there was a slate maybe like 3 weeks ago that I talked about it, how everyone was playing, I think, Vucevic and another center. I forget who that center was, but everyone was double spending up for center. And I think the answer ended up being neither of them. But because everyone was spending up at their center position, they didn't have money to spend for all these other guards, right? And all these other plays. And if you flip the build, it just kind of worked out really well for you. I'm not saying you have to do that on this slate, but that is why you are not going to see ownership on some of these plays that you discussed in Brandon Miller and other plays that we'll get to.
Yeah, really, really fun slate, and hoping to stay on the Miller train. Honestly, I don't really know what's going to push me off him at this point. First game of the night, and he's going to be in the starting lineup. So, yeah, I will likely be on the Miller train. Only one other game in the early 7 p.m. Eastern time window, but it's another very intriguing one for DFS. Minnesota and the Washington Wizards. We know we like to target Washington. I mean, really, 3 of the 4 best teams to target in the league, the Wizards, the Hornets, the Pistons, are 3 of the 4 teams playing in this early window. So this slate should get off to a pretty crazy start. I talked at the top of the show. I know a lot of you guys weren't in here, as we kicked off the show, but Minnesota had the big game with Cat, had the huge first half. They were essentially have admitted to kind of clowning around in the second half to try to get Cat to catch Embiid's 70-point game. Ended up blowing the game, didn't play defense, which is the calling card of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Were called out by the coach in the post-game press conference. There's several ways you could go with this, I think, AP, but my take is that the Wolves come in like as locked in as you can be after the coach called them out. I know they respect the coach. They're having a season that's beyond anyone's expectations. They've got the defensive player of the year front runner in Rudy Gobert. They're a team, frankly, mostly of veterans with Conley, Towns, Gobert, even Edwards in his 3rd or 4th season. And I think they might absolutely throttle the Washington Wizards here, which even if that's true, I'm still not sure how to deal with it, because that means the Wolves are putting up a ton of fantasy points at least early, but maybe not getting run late. We've seen the Wizards been blown out. I don't have the numbers for this, but my guess is they've been blown out even more than the Detroit Pistons have. So I'm not sure quite what to do with this game. 229 total, Minnesota favored by 11. Mike Conley is the big news here. He's questionable to play, obviously. He would open up some value for guys like Nikhil Alexander-Walker. So, yeah, that's a lot, but talk to us, AP, Washington and Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a good point. And the first thing I thought about when I looked at projections, when I looked at ownership projections, I was surprised. Like, I thought, look, Anthony Edwards, underpriced, arguably. Same with Karl Anthony Towns. We've been talking about the kind of the adjustments DraftKings has made with pricing for a little while now. And I'm seeing that right here with Edwards and with Karl Anthony Towns in what I think is like the best matchup ever against the Wizards. So I'm not seeing a lot of ownership on them. Like the highest current projected guy, I don't think plays tonight. And that's Mike Conley. I'm looking at a couple different sources right now, pushing like 20%. A lot of that has to do with the cheap price tag on him, 5,300. But he's more of a game manager type. I think it would have obviously helped to have him in the game because he could have, reeled everyone back in when Cat was going on. I mean, the interview that Ant had after the game was telling. He's like, I didn't care about what I was doing. He's like, I was getting the ball to Cat. And I mean, they're all just feeding him. That's what they're doing. So obviously they lost sight of the game. And, rightfully so. Like Cat could not miss in the first half. I mean, it was insane what he was doing.
Sorry to cut you off, but doesn't it seem like something where, like, even though it was a stupid thing to do, they were still doing it as a team, right? And I feel like it's something that you look back at and you're like, oh, that was stupid. But, like, they were still together doing it. And now I think they should be together saying, now we're going to play team ball and throttle this team that's just way, way worse than us.
Yeah, I could see that, or I could see Ant, because the one thing about Ant is he was like, in the second half, he's like, I haven't really taken any shots. And so then he just wasn't, he wasn't in rhythm at all. And so I actually think, just from listening to the interview, and who knows how it actually happens. I just know this matchup against the Wizards is going to be another one where you could have Cat, you could have Ant, you could have any of these guys easily hitting 40, like 40 real points. Yep. So I love the spot. I think Anthony Edwards is going to make for an incredible tournament play at 8,700 tonight. We talk about positions and how important it is all the time. Just look at the guard and shooting guard spot. DeJounte Murray, Bogdan Bogdanovic. Bogdan is shooting guard only, which makes it even more interesting. You have Donovan Mitchell. We have LaMelo Ball. Jalen Green, another interesting play, and obviously some Q tags in the Mavs game. It's just you can't play all of these guys because they're guard only. So I think Anthony Edwards is going to be very low owned, and I think he's a guy that could absolutely break the slate, especially in a matchup against the Wizards. So that whole situation is not going to scare me off of this game. I think it's one we want to target. Don't forget about the bench players against this Wizards team, something we talk about all the time. I think it's a bounce-back spot for Naz Reid. Yep. Naz Reid, just because he had one bad game, do we really think that they're going away from him in this rotation? No, not at all. I don't think so at all. And this Wizards matchup is incredible for a guy like Naz Reid, even like Kyle Anderson. So, again, what am I doing? How am I handling it? I actually am bumping some of those reserve players, but I'm still following my rule of 3 max from any one team on the slate. So it's not like I'm going to get a 5-team, onslaught stack. That's not how I'm playing. I don't mind mix and matching. I don't mind playing a Naz Reid with like an Ant Edwards. I don't know if I'd play Karl Anthony Towns and Naz Reid together, but I definitely would play Ant with him. So I'm going to target the Wolves side. Even Gobert, I don't mind going back to him. I think it's a great spot. And look, man, the Wizards, they're running a wide rotation right now. There's so many good plays on the slate. I don't think there's any need to go to the Wizards side.
No, I don't want to go to the Wizards against the best defense in the league and a team that I really do think is going to be locked in from the jump in this game, which you certainly can't say for every team in the NBA in general, and especially not on a night-to-night basis. But I'll be pretty surprised if the Wolves come out at all lackadaisical in this one after what happened in the last game. Let's go to you, Mangone. Your thoughts here, Wizards and Wolves.
Yeah, we'll say I know we haven't gotten to the game, but Jayshawn Tate and Jabari Smith Jr. just got ruled questionable. So, yeah.
AP's going to have to unregister. He can't play his man Jason Tate. I mean, what's the point in getting in the NBA streets if Tate's out?
Yeah, it's going to be tough for him to get his Tate exposure. But, yeah, that is a very interesting piece of news that came across the timeline. So, more value forwards available possibly on this slate. But let's go.
And Mangone, you can play your man Dylan Brooks if those guys are out. I know that excites you.
Yeah, I mean, I could play K Fallick's boy, Amen Thompson. The guy that I played a little bit at one time. And I'll say this: Amen Thompson dropped 42 the other day. Fallick,
yeah, he was awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, but anyways, so this game, I'm not super excited about this game. I do think, from listening to the interview with Ant Edwards, they basically said they need to play a lot more defense. And listen, it won't be hard to play defense here against the Wizards. I don't think. I think they're going to throttle them pretty good. Yeah. I do think that the AP's point about Ant Edwards, like 8-7 is just too cheap for a guy like him in this matchup, right? Like he can just have a huge ceiling performance. Some of these guys that used to be like 9-5, 9-6, they're now down in that 8-7 range, right? So I don't think Ant is the craziest idea. I don't really like anyone else on the Timberwolves. I think Gobert and Towns, they're just not necessary on this slate. There's better plays that I'd rather get to. And then, I mean, Conley, like I said, 5'3", I don't need to get there for Mike Conley. There's other ways I'd rather use my salary. I will probably X him like I do on pretty much every single slate. So no need for Mike Conley for me. I'll be looking elsewhere. I don't need any Wizards, right? This Wizards team on this slate, with all this value that we're going to have, I just don't think it's necessary for me. So I'm out on this game for the most part, unless it's like maybe an Edwards one-off or something.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out who I should play if the Wolves win this game 130-90. And the problem with the Wolves is it could still be a number of guys, right? It would help matters if Conley's out, but I do think the Wolves put up some big numbers in this one. Just a matter of picking the right ones. Easier said than done for sure. We got to keep it moving though. We'll go to the 7:30 Eastern time window. Just one game here: Memphis and Miami. Miami favored by 11 in this one. 215 total. They will have new trade acquisition Terry Rozier available to play. I haven't seen if he is starting. I would assume so. Jaquez is out. Highsmith questionable for Miami, and in Memphis, man, the injuries, they just don't stop with this team. It's getting a little bit ridiculous. Already missing Derrick Rose, Marcus Smart, John Morant, Steven Adams, Brandon Clark, Santi Aldama joins them on the injured list. Jake LaRavia out, Desmond Bane is out, and now the point guard, because they've lost their first 3 or 4 string point guards. Luke Kennard, who was running, if you look at the numbers, AP, he was legit running the point in the last game.
Yep.
Had 15 potential assists in that one. He's questionable with the midday downgrade. I mean, I kind of think he's just going to sit, but
he is going to sit.
You know that for sure?
Yeah, my Memphis buddy. Well, my Jay Douglas. Shout out to you. I got a text this morning. He's been spot on. He's like 6 for 6 with these news things. He's like, yeah.
Is this a different Memphis guy that made me play Kenny Lofton on the first second or third slate of the season? I hope so, because that did not work out. I took a DMP.
No, I didn't have this info like that early. I don't think he said anything about Kenny Lofton. I think that if anything, that was no, that definitely wasn't him.
All right.
But no, he's been spot on. He says very unlikely for Luke Kennard to play tonight, but obviously Jenkins has the final say with that. So they're I've been talking about it, trying to figure out what this rotation is going to look like, because they don't have a lot of bodies, and I think Conchar becomes like an absolute lock, because think about who could run point. Jacob Gilyard has been terrible. He's been so bad. He's not good. I mean, they're literally running Luke Kennard, point guard, to get away from this guy. So I could see Conchar. I mean, Vince Williams has been awesome. I think Zaire Williams is the other guy to take a shot on here. But again, shooting guard only, 3,500. But again, shooting guard only. I mean, shooting guard is just absolutely stacked on this slate. I think, and then it's David Roddy. He has had a really nice role off the bench as well. So these all, and then Gregory Jackson. I think he's going to have a big role. So Memphis should be somewhat of a priority that you want to target. Xavier Tillman, all of these guys are going to have to play big minutes. I do think Conchar is the guy at 4K. I trust him a lot more than Jacob Gilyard. Now I'm working under the assumption that Luke Kennard sits. So, and I want to have my battle plan all ready to go before that news drops, because I mean it could drop right before the 7 Eastern games. And so if I have it all mapped out to where I'm building my lineups with that in mind, and I like it in SaberSim because I can run 2 different scripts. I can run a Kennard in script, which again, it's just going to take me off of the Conchar type of player, or I'm not going to play him as heavily. But if we assume that Kennard is out, like the news that we have, then I think you want to start building in those scripts, and so that you're ahead of the game or ahead of the curve on that. So if that is the case, if Kennard is out, Memphis not going to have a lot of bodies tonight. Going to be definitely a team that we want to target. Vince Williams has been awesome. And then it's David Roddy, and then Gregory Jackson, 4,100 off the bench, I think has to play here some as well. Who's going to run point? Who knows? Probably Conchar, maybe a little bit of Gilyard. I don't think you can go to a Scottie Pippen Jr. though. If Kennard's out, I just think it's too thin, unless he was starting, which that would be a complete curveball because he's played no minutes on the season.
Man, so I like Conchar. I mean, I was considering him even before the Kennard news dropped, doing my early builds, early research. Kennard was not on the injury report.
News hasn't dropped yet. That's just what I was told. So
no, I'm saying even before he was questionable. I assumed Kennard would be in there running the point. I was still on Conchar, so you have to give him the upgrade. I don't know. I mean, tell me if you guys disagree with this strongly. I don't know if Conchar can like run a true point guard role. Maybe he can. I know Gilliard sucks, Mangone, but like he is a point guard. Like that is his. He's been playing point guard his whole life. So if Kennard sits, I think they would start Gilliard at point guard, and that would leave only Scottie Pippen behind him, who is, even with all these injuries, essentially never plays. I mean, this Memphis, I really, really like the slate, but the Memphis stuff is tough for me because it's like all these players kind of suck. They're in a bad matchup on the road, good chance of getting blown out. I just worried about the Memphis guys, but they're so cheap that they have to have multiple guys get there if Kennard ends up missing this game, which we think he will. Talk to me, Mangone, Memphis and Miami.
Yeah, I don't worry about Gilliard starting just because I think between Vince Williams Jr., who, think about it, he's kind of emerged as more of a ball handler now.
I thought that was going to be the case, but if you look at the last couple of games, the data, like it's really been Kennard. It's like they tried Vince the first game and then they went away from him as the point guard.
But if they don't have Kennard now, then it's different, right? Then it's got to be Vince and Jaren Jackson.
Maybe unless they think Vince can't do it.
Yeah, and I mean, if they don't think Vince can do it, you'll see Gilliard start, right?
Yeah.
Like you'll see him start, and then that'll be the sign. But I think there's a really good chance you still see Conchar in there, and they have Jaren Jackson Jr., right? They have Vince Williams. They have guys that can ball handle enough from that front court and play more of a point forward role. Then I'm not as worried about that, right? And honestly, you need to have a secondary point guard off the bench, right? That's why Gilliard, I think, makes sense still being in that role off the bench. I don't think they're just going to give Pippen Jr. like 16 minutes out of nowhere to run that backup point. So, but the starting lineup will give us a lot of information about that. Good news, too, is this game is early enough, right? I mean, we'll know. Sure, we might not know the starting lineup right away, but like, we'll know with enough versatility to be able to make decisions, right? So I'm perfectly fine with that. I think overall, really good spot. Gotta like Conchar. I think he's one of my favorites here. I really like Roddy too. Vince Williams Jr. is at 6'5", is a pretty good play. Jaren Jackson Jr. at 8'2", he's a good play, but you got to compare him to Wembanyama, and you got to compare him to Şengün, which is obviously tough. And then the Miami side of the ball, I don't like anyone here. I think this is a full fade spot. It's really focusing on these Memphis values and trying to figure out, based on the starting lineup, who are some of the best options. But for me, John Conchar seems like the kind of lock guy that I just think is really good at this spot.
That all makes sense. None of us really talked about Miami. I'm not playing anyone from Miami with Rozier in on this game, but it is a good matchup. Do you guys have any interest on any of the Heat guys?
Nope.
No.
Yeah. All right. 3 for 3. We're out on the Heat, barring some unforeseen news. Next game on the slate, Cleveland and Milwaukee. Obviously, Milwaukee with the new coach in there, Doc Rivers. I assume he'll be coaching tonight against Cleveland. It is a relatively high total here, 237. Milwaukee favored by 6.5. Ty Jerome, Darius Garland remain out for Cleveland. Karis LeVert, who missed the last game, is questionable. We've seen lead guards especially, go off all season against this Cleveland team, or against Milwaukee, rather. That's what happens when you have Damian Lillard and Malik Beasley in the backcourt AP. Looks like a pretty awesome spot for Donovan Mitchell. He's expensive, $9,700, but deservedly so, I think. And then, Giannis, I know the matchup's not perfect, but assuming that he was kind of the catalyst, which I think is a fairly safe assumption behind getting a new coach at home, you have to assume he wants to win this game, wants to come out with a big performance, right? It's kind of a prove-it game a little bit for the team leader, one of the top 5 players in the NBA, no question about it. So I think Giannis has a huge amount of upside in this game, but the Bucks do make me nervous just with the unknowns. Talk to me, AP, Milwaukee, and Cleveland.
Yeah, so the last time these two teams played, it was a blowout in Cleveland. Donovan Mitchell, one of the
Cooked him,
chalkier
right?
plays. What?
Did he cook him or did he not have a good game?
Oh, yeah, he cooked them, but
Yeah.
it was a blowout. He only played like 20, 25 minutes. He put up, or maybe it was 27 minutes. I know he put up, hold on, let me pull it up. 55 piece in 25 minutes.
Crazy.
I mean, they destroyed this team, and he was chalk. I remember that slate. It was on the 17th, and I think he's going to be half as owned as what he was on that slate. I just look at, I mean, we've been talking about it for a while now, but just the elite positions or plays at this position, especially in the later window, you can't play all of these guys, and this is where it's like I love getting extremely overweight on a spot like this, because if he does absolutely smash and you're way, way, way overweight the field, I mean, you're going to, your lineups are all going to be looking really, really good. So I think the Bucks, obviously they got something to figure out. Is Doc Rivers going to be the guy that helps them get, I mean, who knows? Probably not. This team might just be cooked. Mangone, I might be with you on that. I think it's Donovan Mitchell. I think we have to really try to prioritize him. Look what he's doing right now. Due to the blowouts, we haven't seen those just like smash games outside of what we saw in the game from Paris. It was kind of telling. He put up, a 77 piece in 40 minutes against this Nets team. But more recently, like against Atlanta, everyone else, like Sam Merrill's been cooking. Sam Merrill's not going to put up he's not going to put up the numbers that he has been like night in, night out. Regression is going to hit him. Same with a lot of these guys. And so when that happens, Donovan Mitchell's going to put up a big number. I think that comes tonight. I absolutely love him here against the Bucks. The Bucks side, much more difficult to play. If you can get up to Giannis, I mean, it's Giannis, but they are healthy and when the big three or big-ish three, Dame Lillard, Chris Middleton, and Giannis are all in, it's a lot of, it's a lot of fantasy points, a lot of mouths to feed there. So I'm not prioritizing any of them. If anything, it's just, I think the Cavs, they've been playing some really good basketball right now. I think Donovan Mitchell helps to keep it close. We love opposing backcourts, especially three-point shooters against this Bucks team, against Malik Beasley, against Dame Lillard. Max Strus is 5,100. K. Fowlett's boy. I love him tonight. I want to get way over on Max Strus. I think he gets right, puts up a big number. And 5,100 is just, this guy was 7,400 against that was a showdown pricing, but he was 6,600 a week ago or a week and a half ago against the Spurs. So we're getting a really, really nice discount on Max Strus's price.
Yeah, love it. I'm a little worried, Mangone, that Milwaukee comes out super focused on defense and does a better job in this game, but you still got to like Mitchell. I like the Strus call. You can't ignore what Jared Allen's doing, and then depending on how you feel about the Bucks, I think they're interesting as well. Go ahead, Mangone, Milwaukee and Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean, for one, I think what Jared Allen's doing is great, but I don't think it's going to kill me if I don't play him at his price, at least right now. But listen, he's been really good, so you can't complain about what he's doing for that price. Just doesn't feel like it's like breaking the slate on you. Giannis and Mitchell, I just don't think I'm going to get there at their prices today. Like, listen, if I want to spend up for a stud, I think I want to spend up for Luka, who's going to make sure to let Devin Booker know, like he always does, who his dad is. So I just don't see myself getting to this game that much. I think Chris Middleton at 6'6", it's hard to argue with him again, playing those 30 minutes for the most part. Like, he just seems like a really safe option at 6.6. Mm-hmm. He is going to probably get you, like last guy in, he's going to get you in that range.
35.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And like at 6'6", listen, I'm not going to complain about that at all, right? Like Jalen Williams last night. Yeah, he was my play today.
Middleton's an unsexy play, but I'm looking at him too, Mangone.
Yeah.
More as like the last guy in, right?
Correct.
Like, but you just take your 35, 36 fantasy points and you say, I'll try to win elsewhere, because he's just never going to let you down, is the thing.
Correct. And a lot of nights forward isn't great. Now, to be fair, tonight there's a lot of really good forward value, but like Zion was in like a team that was on a winner last night. I forget which GPP. It may have been like a single entry or 3-max team, but like he only got 37 at 7,400, and that's not great, right? You know what I mean? Like I had Jalen Williams at 6,700 on all my teams, and like he got 35. Wasn't a flame, but like it definitely was part of the equation, right? And I think he's one of those guys that you could plug in and you feel safe he's not going to burn your lineups, but also he's a safe, solid play that's going to just not have a lot of ownership. So I like Chris Middleton here in this spot. And I think that's all I'm really looking at in this game. Now, if Karis LeVert sits at 6K, yeah, I'm going to look at some other options, right? I know Damian Lillard struggles on defense, so we'll want to consider some of those guards like Donovan Mitchell. I doubt I'm biting into the Sam Merrill thing, but I think Sam Merrill will gain some ownership if someone like Karis LeVert's out. And if Karis LeVert is out, my Max Struss exposure will definitely change, right? And I want to consider him a little bit more at that 5.1K price tag. But again, we need that Karis LeVert news. And also, maybe we get Karis LeVert news, but maybe it doesn't matter because we've gotten other news, right? Maybe Jabari Smith gets ruled out. Mike Conley just got ruled out, right? Like, there's a lot of moving parts on this slate that we might not know about that could happen, that we might not even care about the Karis LeVert stuff.
Yeah. So far, it seems like all the questionable players have been ruled out, right? Conley out, Cade Cunningham out. We've got a couple players, Jason Tate, Jabari Smith, who we thought were going to play, be ruled questionable since we've been on the air. So, yeah, potentially even more good plays opening up, shaping up to be a lot of options tonight, AP. And, of course, I'll certainly be tuning in to the Up to Lock show on Run Pure Sports to break it all down. Some tough decisions to be made. A lot of good plays on the slate. It is shaping up to be a slate where you got to be careful not to take too much down or phrase that wrong. I think you need upside at every single one of your roster spots because there's enough players where I don't think like an 18, even from a 3.2K player, is going to be enough tonight. I think you're going to have to put up big numbers at every single roster spot. That's how I'm going to be building. We'll keep it moving for now.
DC, on that point, you got to understand those like punt 3Ks. Like you got to ask yourself, do they hold the same value now with the pricing changes? Like look at like Sadiq Bey could play like 35 minutes as a starter tonight with how thin they are. He's 5,100. Max Strus, the same thing. Bogdan, like Concha, same thing. You got to be careful. You got to understand the pricing is different now. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like you need to prioritize that when you're building your lineups.
If you're praying for 20 fantasy points from your guy tonight, I think you should move on and kind of rebuild a little bit and go for someone who has 30 plus, 35 plus fantasy point upside at every single spot on the roster. Just my personal take on this slate. Yeah. Portland and Houston, another very, very interesting game here. Houston favored by 10. Relatively low, 219 total, but significant injury news on both sides of the ball. We know Portland been one of the best teams to target all year long. That remains. So, Mangone, was it you who tweeted the DeAndre Ayton stuff where he's like, I'm a max player?
Yeah,
was that you?
It was. Yeah, he was basically being like, I'm a max player and like I don't really care.
He got paid. He got paid. He doesn't really seem to give a shit anymore. There are worse crimes to commit. But I will say, it does seem like Sengun is going to cook this team. I mean, he's been fantastic recently. He seems super safe. Price is good on him. They will get Van Vliet back here, but Houston now potentially without Jalen Green, who's been questionable all day, and then Tari Eason already rolled out, Jabari Smith questionable, and then Jason Tate questionable. Potentially a shorthanded Houston team, which if that's the case against Portland at home, I mean, man, they're going to have some guys smash. I think Sengun leads the way, but I think Van Vliet could easily get there. I think Dylan Brooks at 5,200. He put up, 40 fantasy points last game out in a similar situation, and even not quite as good of a spot at this one. He's interesting. Amen Thompson, K-Falix boy, like Houston AP potentially becomes extremely interesting on this slate. I'm pretty much out on Portland, assuming we don't get unexpected news there. But, man, the Houston side of the ball looks good already and potentially awesome. 8 p.m. Eastern time window here. Talk to us, AP. Trailblazers, and Rockets.
Yeah, I mean, this team has given up big numbers to opposing point guards and opposing big men. So, and Alperen Şengün is just smashing, like absolutely smashing. A few things to keep in mind. Portland is on the second end of a back-to-back. I was surprised that we didn't get any, like, Brogdon, Q-tag. So, like, just I have it highlighted. I have a note to myself, hey, keep an eye on the Blazers. I wouldn't be surprised if they rested someone. Probably would be Brogdon. So that's something that I'm kind of, preparing for. But if Brogdon plays, I don't think I'm going to mess with it. Simon, like the team, they're just so bad, man. They're terrible. I agree with you. The Rocket side is what I have interest in. Şengün 8,300 is just too cheap for what he's doing. And if a Jabari, Tari Eason's already out. So, if Jabari Smith is also out from a big man standpoint, I think it does solidify, Şengün's role or minutes just a little bit. So if you're worried about blowout or anything like that, I think Şengün is going to get his either way. So Fred VanVleet is the other guy I'm looking at. Same with Jalen Green. Again, their point guard, shooting guard. The position just absolutely loaded, but Jalen Green, 6,200. He's definitely going to go overlooked on the slate. And in this matchup, I think he has a ton of upside, especially if Brogdon's out on the other side. So the Rockets, I have a ton of interest in them. My favorite is Şengün. And the Blazers, I'm probably not going to touch unless we get some news there, unless a few pieces, like if they randomly announce like Brogdon, Jeremy Grant, or something like that all out, then I would have a little bit more interest.
Makes sense. Let's go to you, Mangone. Rockets and Trailblazers.
Yeah, Rockets and Trailblazers. The Blazers are not really a team that I am that interested in. So I don't really want to discuss them too much. I do want to discuss Houston and how to handle them because Şengün, clearly one of the better plays on this slate. And listen, he's a good play, but like a lot of people are playing him, right? And he's 8.3K. It is a good spot though for him. And if Jabari Smith misses, man, this is going to be a really good spot for him and Fred VanVleet, who's not going to get any ownership at 7.4K. So those two would be intriguing options. Jalen Green, if he did get ruled out, I do think people would gravitate more towards VanVleet, but we don't have that information. And who knows when we're going to get that information, right? That's an 8 o'clock start. We'll get an update at around 6:30, but we don't know what the update is. So that's something you're going to have to watch for. Reasons to be in the Discord chat over here at Run Pure Sports. So go sign up and use that code New Year. Dylan Brooks at 5.2K. He's a pretty good option here that I think you have to consider just because, one, they're missing bodies. Two, the game environment where it's a sloppy game against Portland because we know Portland plays sloppy basketball. It's just a really good game that fits him pretty well. So I don't mind him. If you get news that Tate is out and Jabari Smith, some of these other guys are going to emerge as values, right? Is it going to be Jeff Green, Cam Whitmore? Could it be Amen Thompson? Some of these guys are going to emerge as interesting values, and I think starting lineups could help give us some of that information for sure. And also, you can also say that what if this game does blow out, right? Maybe someone like an Amen Thompson or a Cam Whitmore gets more run later in the game to help them get the value. The one argument you can make, though, is the point that AP said. We got some pricing that has been moved down on plays like a Sadiq Bey, right? Who is just cheap at 5.1K and shouldn't be. So that might be the reason to not take a chance on that. But I am just mentioning that these guys, they could come into play and they could become starters, which if they're starters, I'll be more interested in them. But if we get news on the Memphis side that we're missing like a Luke Kennard, well, that'd be huge, right? And then I might want to go to some of these other values instead, right? So depending on who's in and out with all these teams, it could change who our favorite plays are. That's one reason why you got to sign up, right? It's a great day to be in the Discord chat and get all the information.
Yeah, a lot going on in the slate. Daniel Mardorf, loyal watcher of the show, any Cam Whitmore love. I mean, I was just kind of digging into him as you guys were talking a little bit because, the Jabari Smith and Tate news was kind of unexpected. Both of those guys I had in doing early research. I don't watch that much Rockets, to be honest. Whitmore, though, he's over a fantasy point per minute on the season, and I did run the numbers with, Jabari, Tate, Tari Eason, and I ruled out Jalen Green, too, who's legitimately questionable in this game. And Whitmore, man, he pops off the page in terms of fantasy points per minute. Do either of you guys, Mangone or AP, have, or anyone in chat really, just opinions on him as a player? Because he looks like a potential player who could pop on this slate. AP, go ahead.
Yeah, I added him to the heat map. I just think if those guys are out, he's going to be – I mean, like we've seen it, like the 26 minutes last few games.
He could close a blowout if they all sit too, is the thing. Like,
But
that's what I want. I want him starting, I think, and then also
and everybody out. And then he's an awesome play, though, I think.
Yes.
I think we got to be careful, though, because it's like, are you going to go? Are you going to punt down to that, or why not just play like a Max Strus or like a Sadiq Bey, type? So or Nickeil Alexander-Walker, small forward, eligible too. So that's the only thing that I'm going to be asking myself.
Yeah, or Okongwu, right? There's just a lot of really good value. So I think this spot has to really align for you to like him, and maybe it's more of a FanDuel player, right? I know someone was asking in the chat about FanDuel. Well, like, to be fair, though, there's still like really good value everywhere. It's not just that Atlanta spot. So there's a lot of good value on the
I would definitely play him over Jae'Sean Tate, though, just for the record.
Yeah, I will say this is always the case. If good value emerges early, everybody jumps on that first early value, right? Instead of waiting for potential late value. It makes sense. You take the bird in the hand over one in the bush, but oftentimes you can get the same value late at a fraction of the ownership if you're willing to take the risk that maybe it doesn't emerge. So I would add that to the equation. I've said it a few times now, but a really, really fun slate today. Let's go to the next game on the slate. Another good one. Phoenix and the Dallas Mavericks. We've seen kind of a vintage Kevin Durant run these last couple games, which is awesome to see. This one, I think the highest total on the slate, tied with OKC and San Antonio. 242 total. Dallas, a lot of players questionable, including essentially their entire backcourt. Kyrie Irving, Dante Exum, Luka, Seth Curry, all questionable. I kind of think, AP, that Luka and Kyrie at least will be in there, but you never know in the NBA. And Phoenix should be mostly healthy for this one. Eric Gordon, questionable, should be pretty much healthy. Otherwise, another good game here. Phoenix and Dallas. Talk to me, AP.
Yeah, I think I got to bump up my KD exposure and projection. Shout out to Bobby Hare. Bobby Hare was all over the KD play. It got overshadowed by and was kind of a moot point and irrelevant due to the nights that Karl Anthony Towns and Joel Embiid all had. I mean, like KD's 70 piece wasn't really doing it for you with the numbers that those guys put up, but still an amazing performance. That win there at the end was just incredible, like a little pump fake while in the air shot to get it done against the Bulls. This is a great matchup too. Jason Tatum just put up a monster number against this Mavericks team. I think Randall put up a big number too. The matchup is just really, really strong. So KD, I think, is the guy that right now, this Sun team is going to be like a hot hand type of approach. It's going to be one that I'm fading more often than not just because so many mouths to feed. But the pricing has come down a little bit. 9,300 for Kevin Durant and a really good matchup against the Mavericks, assuming that Luka and Kyrie plays. I have interest. I have a ton of interest too. And then on the other side, you got to figure that Luka's going to play. I mean, he owns the Suns too. And at 11-3, again, even with Kyrie playing, look at the numbers that Luka is putting up, a 75 piece and an 83 against Boston. I think we should have interest in Luka tonight. So find ways to get these studs. We've been talking about it over the last few shows that we've done, and it's really worked out. I know we talked about it on the last show that we were on with Embiid. I think it was, looking at the Embiid and Luka lineups, and those absolutely crushed. I know Big T, JSU both had that path in their core on Monday. And you got to consider that, especially on a night like tonight when everyone's looking at the DeJounte Murrays or maybe the LaMelo Balls and Donovan Mitchells. It's on slates like this one. where that two stud type of approach definitely gets overlooked.
Absolutely. Chosen Nick, I have no idea where the bird in the hand, one in the bush
That was a
reference
good
I don't
reference
think
there, DC.
I don't think I've ever made that reference in my 38 years on this earth prior to this show, and I have no idea why it came out of me today. But showing my age a little bit on that one. Mangone, let's go to you for this game, Phoenix Dallas. What do you got for us?
Yeah, I am hoping that the bird that's in my hand is Luka Doncic tonight, right? And not Kyrie Irving or any of those other guys. Like Luka's the guy tonight, right? If I can spend up, that's the bird I want in my hand. I want him absolutely crushed. It's just such a good spot. And we have the value to make it happen, right? I think you got to consider Luka really highly today at 11.3K. The downside is, well, what if he gets ruled out, right? Well, now, of course, you could maybe pivot to a Kyrie, but if he got ruled out, it would become a bit of a shit show, but you do have some pivots, right? One of your pivots is an hour later, you have a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So at least that's encouraging, right? That's there as an option. You got DeJounte Murray. If you don't have him in there, then you could upgrade another spot. So, hey, we have pivots if that doesn't go your way. So that's worth mentioning. I like AP's call with the Kevin Durant stuff. Kevin Durant at 9.3K it's just too cheap for a guy like him at the upside that he has. So I don't think it's crazy to consider him. So it's really just the studs in this game and then move on for me. And of course, like I said, if you do play a Luka or you want to play a Luka, we got value later on you can make pivots later, right? So I think if you want to backload it, you have the ability to. You don't feel like a moron if things kind of don't go your way, if that makes sense. You know what they also have? They even have Victor Wembanyama, who we'll get to here in a second. He's a pretty good play too.
Chat making me laugh. We'll move on to these last two games. We got to get out of here in the next 10 minutes or so. OKC and San Antonio. OKC favored by 8 in this one. 242, another big total. Trey Jones, questionable to play for San Antonio. That could potentially open up some value. I don't know, AP. I don't see myself getting to the Spurs on this particular slate. One, it's a later game. There's so many good plays early that I just don't think I'm going to have a ton of roster spots available, and I just don't trust the Spurs anyway. OKC looks like they should be fully healthy for this one, and honestly, I'm kind of surprised the spread's only 8. I don't have a ton in this game. Obviously, OKC gonna do their thing, and man, I think they're a legit title contender before they're even ready to be almost. But maybe a discussion for another day. For DFS purposes today, this is going to be the game that I have one of the lower exposures to. Not that some of these guys couldn't pop off, but can't play everybody. Talk to me, AP, OKC, and San Antonio.
Yeah, I'm looking at Wemby. The price continues to go down while the minutes are trending up. There's just so many strong plays on this slate, and I want to play. You have the positional flexibility, power forward centered, forward utility, 8,300 price tag.
I mean, dude puts up 50 every game. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think he's a good play. I think the matchup is fine against. I don't mind bigs like him. I mean, against anyone. Like Embiid owned him, absolutely owned him, and we should have known that was coming. We definitely should have known.
I kind of saw it coming on the show. I was like, I don't know. I think Embiid's just going to take.
I don't. Did you see how many minutes Maxey played? He played 42. He came out of the game for a couple minutes, and I was very, very overweight on Maxey that game.
Me too. Yeah,
Maxey was a spectator. He didn't need to do anything. He was watching Embiid own Wemby. So I love this bounce back spot. I think Wemby's just I think he could what he played 28 minutes. Could we get 30 here in a good spot? I think it's in the realm of outcomes. So at home after getting embarrassed, and I don't think Trey Jones plays. So it's going to be Trey Jones has been kind of the bright spot running point. And I know they've struggled without him out there, and it's just get the ball to Wemby and let him work. And so I think that's what we see tonight. I think he's a great play. And I mean, if you knew at 8,300 on this slate tonight, he's going to get you 53. What would you do? Would you lock him, or would you? I don't need to lock him in there.
I'd be way over the field. That's for sure.
I mean, I would definitely lock him. I would take the 53 points and move on. So you're kind of fading. It's that other build that we talked about, like the double stud Luka plus like an SGA or something like that. You're hoping that they don't go for like 80 plus like we saw the other night. So I think that's kind of what you're fading from a 53 from Wemby. So, and then the OKC is getting very easy for me. I don't know about you guys, but it's SGA or pass. And again, a guard like SGA against the Spurs, I have all the interest in the world in that. And I think he's going to go very low. And this guy continues to just put up monster numbers coming off a really nice performance against Portland. Obviously, they're on a second end of a back-to-back, so keep that in mind as well.
It's going to be fun to watch Wemby grow up. Still 20 years old, Mangone. Like, imagine if he has the body transformation that Giannis had. Like, Giannis looked like Wemby coming into the league, but Giannis still doesn't have nearly the skill that Wembanyama has. I mean, what's Wembanyama, if he stays healthy, what's he going to be putting up on a DK slate at 26, 27 years old? 100 fantasy points a game? It's just absurd to think what this guy could do if everything breaks his way. We can't discuss all that today, but man, his upside is so intriguing. Megan, let's get your take here on OKC and San Antonio.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to get Giannis jacked, but he just needs to gain a little bit of like man weight.
He could,
right? Like we'll see if he gets that jacked, but it'll be interesting. We did get news. I should mention this because we did just get news that like Kyrie is not going through his usual pregame warm-up routine. It's not official, right? But who knows? Maybe he had to take a shit.
He's gonna sit
minutes, but or maybe he's out. And if he's out, that's a really big piece of news. So just for tiebreakers, trying to backload's not the worst idea. And there's good plays, right? In this game and other games. I'll tell you this, if Trey Jones sits, I'm not dying to get to too many Spurs still, just because there's such good value. Like, I don't need to mess around with Popovich. Now, Victor, I'm interested in him as a stud spend, but you have to compare him to some other ones. Like, I think Şengün's a little bit of a better play than him, but especially if a Jabari Smith is out. But, yeah, I think he's in play. And then on the OKC side of the ball, yeah, Shai is an interesting spend up option if you need it. But, again, I think I'd rather get the Luka. And then, two, I think Jalen Williams at 7K, another guy like Chris Middleton, right? You can plug into that last spot, kind of last guy in. I don't think it's the worst, but also on a second night of back-to-back, and after OKC played 13 guys and went so deep into the rotation, I'm a little hesitant to play some OKC guys in this spot just because of how stupid their rotation was last night.
Yeah, no question. The Kyrie news. I've got two big teams tonight, and I think I got to save on at least one of the teams a spot for Luka if Kyrie misses, right? Like the ultimate hammer if Kyrie's out there in that spot. The Suns have been just absolutely toasted by point guards all year long. Makes sense when you get, when you see who they're running out there, Devin Booker and the like at the point guard spot. So, yeah, the slate gets crazier and crazier the closer we get to lock. We do have one more game to talk about, Atlanta and Golden State. Golden State favored by 6.5 here, pretty high, 235 total. Trae Young remains out with the concussion. Joining him on the sideline for Atlanta, Wesley Matthews, DeAndre Hunter, Bruno Fernando. Looks like Podsy is going to play for Golden State, who should have everybody else in there as well outside of the long-term injury to Chris Paul. Obviously, Golden State had their last two games postponed due to the death to the assistant coach. Like I said at the top of the show, I don't really know AP of what to think for Golden State. I think a reasonable person could take either side and say, listen, it kind of sucks discussing it for DFS purposes, but it's our job. So we got to make lineups and we're just going to do it because we have to. You could see Golden State just coming out flat, right? And just not, it's kind of a tough season for them anyway. And they lose their coach and maybe it's hard to get up and play basketball at all. Or, you're inspired and want to play for your coach. So I don't know really what to expect, honestly. I guess I kind of default to the Vegas line, and that seems like it's lined exactly like it would be if it had never happened. So, yeah, I'm not sure what to do with that. I will say I'm not that interested on the Golden State side of the ball here, but you have to be on Atlanta with Trae Young out, DeJounte Murray, who seems like he kind of wanted to get traded, get out of Atlanta. I think he is tired of playing second fiddle to Trae Young, which I get. I think DeJounte Murray has a legitimate argument to being a better overall player, conducive to winning than Trae Young is. And man, he's putting up some big numbers in these games that Trae Young is out. The stats back it up. 8,400 for DeJounte Murray. I think he's got another big game coming here. He's another one of those guys. I put him in that Sengun bucket. Yes, chalky. Yes, relatively expensive. Feel very, very safe with that type of play tonight. And I think the upside is there as well. Let's go to UAP, Atlanta, and Golden State.
Yeah, I mean, this is the tough one because the Warriors side, they've changed up their starting lineup so many different times. We could get a new one tonight as well. I mean, Draymond Green came on off the bench in their last game, but that was just kind of to get him going against Memphis, and Darius Saric has been starting, and Pods is also in. So the Warriors side, if Draymond started randomly,
he's gonna start.
You think he's going to start?
Absolutely.
mean, yeah, if he starts, then I think he's an intriguing play. But I have less interest in the Warriors side. They haven't been playing good, and I get the situation. I don't know how to factor that into DFS. So I'm just going off of what I know. They've been struggling. And what I do also know is the Hawks are very, very limited, obviously with Trae Young and multiple other pieces out, and they should have a really tight rotation. Look at their bench, like Patty Mills. I mean, Garrison Matthews, he can come in and hit a couple threes, but these aren't staple pieces in the rotation. And so it should be very tight with DeJounte Murray, Bogdan as well, Sadiq Bey. This Warriors team has really struggled against these shooters, especially like Bogdanovic. We just saw it was Vince Williams went off. Levine had a big game. Bogdan, Sadiq Bey, tons of interest in those two. DeJounte Murray obviously is going to be chalk of the slate. It's what do you do with the bigs? I think Okongwu at 4'6", he'll come off the bench. I think he's really, really interesting. He can play alongside Clint Capella, and I wouldn't be surprised if he got more run than Capella as well. And then Jalen Johnson. My problem with Jalen Johnson at 7,200 is kind of he's in that same bucket as Jalen Williams. These guys at the 7K range, I think you got to be a little bit careful with, because if they get you 36, 37, I think it could absolutely tank you tonight. So you want a big number from those guys. If you're playing a 7K guy, you want that guy to have 50-point upside. And so I'm just a little concerned with Jalen Johnson and Jalen Williams, those types around the 7K spot. So definitely going to have a lot of Hawks here. But again, I'm limiting 3 max per team. That includes the Hawks as well tonight.
Yeah, makes sense to me. DeJounte Murray, by far my favorite play in this game, Mangone. What about you? What do you see Atlanta, Golden State?
Yeah, of course, DeJounte Murray, great play in this game. You can't ignore him. I think he's a really, really good option. I do think the Draymond thing is interesting.
Real quick, Mangone, is there any chance DeJounte Murray becomes a little less owned because there's so many good plays throughout the night that people – maybe they got DeJounte Murray in their lineup originally, but all this value pops up and you swap things around, and I don't know. I could see just people being frozen out of the play because they don't have any spots left or they don't have the salary left. But yeah, go ahead.
The only counter I'll say against that is I think the only way it could happen is if you somehow think Luka gains a lot of that ownership, and then other people, for instance, if you play Murray and Luka, you're left with $5,000 for your last spot, and then you're not getting Sengun, right? Or you're not getting Victor and some of those other good plays. So
that's what I'm saying.
That's how it could happen. But I could also see people just saying, hey, I'm going to play Luka and Murray, and then I'm not even going to worry about those stud centers and go to another spot. I think it depends what other pieces of news fall, but I think it's possible. I don't disagree with what you're saying. And I can see people just saying, I can't get up to Murray at 8'4". He's not 7'2" like he used to be, or 7'3", and maybe go to a Bogdanovic.
And maybe it's the other way, and maybe a guy like LaMelo Ball comes in less owned because now people see the Kyrie news. They want to play DeJounte late. They want to play Sengun, and they can't spend that $9,600 for LaMelo. I know you're kind of off him as well, Mangone, but just a lot of ways to play this slate, truly.
Yes, I'll say this. When I ran stuff going before on the show, I thought LaMelo would like pop a lot more. He didn't pop as much as I thought. So I thought that was interesting. But anyways, Draymond, I want to discuss a little bit at 5'8". I just saw Harrison Barnes drop 32 real-life points on the Hawks. I'm just saying, like
I almost felt guilty. I had Harrison Barnes out of necessity, and I was like, man, I hate this guy, but man, I love you tonight, Harrison.
I can't believe you got away with it. You really you got the Harrison Barnes.
Those ones feel good when you play a play you really don't want to, and they just absolutely smash, and you're like, it's like Obama putting the necklace on himself or the award on himself. Yeah.
It does feel phenomenal when that happens. For sure. So, but Atlanta's great. A lot of good plays. Sadiq Bey at 5'1", pretty good starter. Obviously has hit his shots. Okongwu at 4'6", really good fantasy producer. He's going to play between that like 20 and like 28 minutes. Maybe he can get up to 30 if there's foul trouble. But Okongwu's definitely an interesting play. Bogdanovich at 6K. I know he has been frustrating at times, but this is a good matchup for him, right? Like AP kind of talked about. So I think it is a good bounce back spot for someone like Bogdanovich. Keep in mind, though, he's 6K, right? It's not like he's dirt cheap. You do need him to do well. You can't have him just sit there and get you like 28 DK points. That won't cut it at 6K, right? Even being in like the low 30s, like, I don't know, that might not be enough on this slate, like AP was saying, especially if more and more values emerge. So, overall, though, you got to like these Atlanta Hawks. Really good spot for them because you're backloading a little bit just because these are good plays and you're already getting exposure to them. Hey, this gives you a little bit more flexibility on this slate, and it doesn't just give you flexibility. It gives your opponents as well. Keep in mind, like sometimes you run the slates and you're like, oh, I think I'm going to get these value plays like really low owned. You just got to look at the positions and see what people are locked into to understand that. That's something kind of to think a little bit about just because, like, for instance, let's say a lot of people are playing Bogdanovich. He's going to be like 40% owned. And then like Tim Hardaway Jr. emerges as like a really good value. Well, everyone's going to play Tim Hardaway Jr. over Bogdanovich then, and it's not going to be sneaky for you. So just be cognizant of all the plays that people are locking into to help you decide if a play is lower owned than you think.
Yeah, we got a wild slate on our hands. 57 minutes now before lock. Of course, we got the Up to Lock show. Maybe already started over at Run Chris Sports for the members. If you're not a member yet, you can still use promo code New Year to get 15% off your first weekly or monthly payment. We do got to get out of here running overtime today, understandably so, given the nature of the slate. But before we do, we will get you guys the plays of the day. We'll start with UAP, your gentleman's play of the day.
Yeah, I'm going to go. This Wizards team is so bad. They don't play any defense. And I think we hit the nail on the head with there's so many good plays. Ownership's going to spread out. And if you see ownership consolidating around like the Hawks or whatever, don't be afraid to get different. That's what I'm going to do tonight. And I'm going to do it with plays that just grade out really well. And I think that's Anthony Edwards tonight. Karl Anthony Towns. His usage rate was 56% last game. I think what we see tonight is no Mike Conley. We know he's out. It's, hey, Anthony Edwards, run the offense, do your thing, get going early, and he's going to absolutely cook this backcourt of Jordan Poole and Tyus Jones. Anthony Edwards, my play of the day.
Love it. I'll throw the ball to myself next. That's not as good of a phrase as the bird in the hand, but there we go. I think LaMelo Ball cooks this Detroit team. No Terry Rozier, no Gordon Hayward. They really don't have much else to create plays. And LaMelo is kind of a little bit of an unserious basketball player. But when you put him on the court where he's clearly the best player on the court, which I think is the case tonight against Detroit, I think we'll see LaMelo Ball take over this game, put up a monster score. I'll roll with LaMelo Ball as the Mom's Basement play of the day. Finish us off, Mangone, with the Taylor Swift's box play of the game.
Yeah, I think coming into this show, I think this guy had a lot of ownership. I think some of the ownership is moving away from him with all the craziness going on. And I think ownership spreads tonight. So listen, I'm giving you guys can have some ownership, but I don't care. I think he's too good of a play. I'm going with John Conchar. I think he's too good to pass up on here in this spot. Minutes are going to be strong, and we're expecting him to be out, right? So overall, I'm going with John Conchar. He'll be my play of the day.
You can't go 3 for 3. We got Anthony Edwards, we got LaMelo Ball and we got John Conchar. But hopefully he'll provide you some value to get in those studs. Thanks for tuning in. As always, we really do appreciate it. Hit the like, subscribe on your way out if you haven't yet done so. We will be back same time, same place tomorrow for Mangone, for AP. I am DC, and we're out of here.